even before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 72 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland. We'll be joined by the baseball guru Kevin Bohannon here in just a second, but it is crazy to think that we are officially in the postseason, at least for the classes 1 through 4A. Class 1A through 4A, and of course 5A and 6A is finishing up the final 2 weeks of the regular season, which we've got some pretty crazy conference races as you would expect. And of course, we'll get into those. And to get into those, we will bring in the baseball guru himself, Kevin Bohannon. Thought he was going way back to the early 2000s, had his American Eagle shirt on. Turns out that's an Air Force shirt.
It is an Air Force shirt.
When I first saw it, I'm like, wow, okay, so either American Eagle or Abercrombie and Fitch. We're going back to the way old days here at the turn of the century, the 21st century. But yeah, Kevin, it's crazy. We're only, 3 weeks away from about 3 weeks away from, I guess, this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, from the state championship games, or maybe even 2. I don't know, but it's pretty close before we finish up the season in Conway for the weekend of champions. And no shortage of drama to talk. I was going through this again, and especially just thinking 5A was a big topic of conversation for Jared and I on the softball podcast, and we'll, of course, get into that. But really fun. It's a bittersweet time of year because, yes, it's coming to the end, but the best of the best are competing against each other.
That's exactly right. And that's what you want to see at the end of the day is, look, these teams, they get their record how they get their record during the season. And you and I have always done our rankings based on, are they beating who they're supposed to beat? Are they maybe picking one off? And what's their schedule look like? So that's the biggest thing right there. And a lot of these teams, especially in Northeast Arkansas, have to play out a classification. So if you've gone 17-9, but 8 of those losses are to 5A and 6A teams, and you're a 4A school, things kind of point in your direction that you're battle tested, and you've beaten some of those guys. So we've seen that lately, and we had some upsets the last couple of days. That really changed the postseason picture for a few people.
No question about it, and we will get into those discussions real quick. Before we do, I want to give some love. First off, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you have on the either YouTube, or if you like the audio versions, we are on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Also want to give some love to Athletic Field Service of Arkansas. Call Jeremy Rice for all of your needs for any natural surface, lip removal and edging, or anything there on any natural surface. They can get you taken care of. 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine, servicing all of Southwest Arkansas. Need some TLC for your VCT? Call 870-833-0521. And then, of course, last but not least, Chinook Seedery. Head over to ChinookSeedery.com. Check out all 8 flavors that they have. I've been on a barbecue original kick throughout this spring. I do love the jalapeno ranch and lemon pepper. Can't go wrong with those either. You can type in NSS Media for 10% off of your order, not just your first order, any order. NSS Media for 10% off. All right, let's get into it. 6A. So on Thursday, Bryant and Little Rock Christian are going. That's, right now, it's still Conway that is just running the show. They remain undefeated, and we'll talk a little bit about them, just kind of the rest of the slate that they have. But I know that Bryant and Little Rock Christian on Thursday is a big one. Little Rock Christian has been on a tear lately, and they won that first matchup over the Hornets 2-0. And then also we've got Conway Cabot. That's an interesting one because the first matchup was Conway 8-5. So,
it was.
so it is. It was a close matchup. I know Cabot has had some slip ups, and we talked about last week that, Coach Ronnie Goodwin, he's always going to field a solid squad, and never know what could happen here down the stretch, even though they have had some of those hiccups. But really, those 2 matchups between Bryant and Little Rock Christian, and then Conway Cabot, are ones to watch here at the end of the week in 6A.
Yeah, and Conway has wrapped up the conference title. They're 13-0 on the tiebreakers, even if they lost. They're playing 16 now, I think. So even if they lost 3 in a row, they own the tiebreaker. So Yeah, they've won it. And Rogers has won their 6th straight conference title. Just when you think Rogers is like, they're going to fall down a little bit this year, they go out and win the 6A West. So congratulations, Matt Melson and the Mounties. They just keep rolling along. And Conway clinched over Southwest, and it was a lopsided score, 36-0. But I want to give a shout out to Southwest. We don't talk about Southwest, the Griffins, very much on here. But they hit their first home run in school history last week. And that's something that you and I got in this business, was to celebrate teams, their accomplishments, and the kids who do it. So, even though they're sitting at the bottom of the conference, they've accomplished something that they haven't before. So congratulations to those guys. Cabot really needs to win. Cabot sitting at the 4 line right now. They need to knock somebody off. They've shown that they can. The 8-5 win over lost to Conway earlier this season. I talked to Coach Leighton Harden from Conway after that, and he's like, man, they competed, and, we didn't play that well, so we do it again. He thinks that, Cabot's got a really good shot at beating them, so that would end the 22-0 streak by Conway. Little Rock Christian continues to impress. Bryant, look, they lost to Conway 2-0, and Conway's pitching has been one of the best that's in the state this year, and they're on a roll right now. So it could be another low-scoring affair. Wouldn't surprise them if it was 3-1, something like that. Going to the 6A West, Harbor back in the picture. They're 11-5, so they're done. Rogers still has 2 games. Fayetteville has 2. Bentonville West, shockingly, 5 right now, and Bentonville 6. So we're starting to get the state tournament matchups and who's going to get those all-important buys going into the state tournament at North Little Rock.
I was looking at Rogers, and I didn't realize throughout us doing this every week, they have not lost to an in-state opponent since March 17th. So about a month and a half. 114 straight overall. They got 5A number 1 Valley View coming in to town on Friday, and then you mentioned that they've already got the West title locked up, but they've got their series with Fort Smith Northside remaining in conference play. But I'll tell you what, we'll kind of transition this, since we've already kind of gone through 6A. We'll transition this in a little bit into 5A, since we're talking about Valley View being number 1.
Pretty good.
That's going to be a really fun match. Did that match? If I'm not mistaken, Rogers and Valley View, weren't they scheduled for last year and it got rained out? Or so I'm having deja vu. I swear Valley View was supposed to play a NWA team and it didn't happen.
Yeah, they've gone over there the last 2 years.
Okay, I thought for some reason that it didn't. I thought it got rained out last year. I couldn't remember.
Right before state tournament too. So I think last year one of them got rained out. I'm not quite sure of, but Valley View, they just keep rolling. Their magic numbers down to 1 to clinch another conference title. Since 2018, they are 97-2 in conference play. So spanning the last 7 seasons minus 2020, it's pretty good. So 55 straight after a doubleheader sweep over Paragould last night, 12-0, 12-1. So kudos to Matt Snyder, Josh Allison, and those guys. They're playing good baseball right now. Searcy, congratulations, Lions. You are going to be the number 2 seed out of the 5A East. We haven't talked about you enough, but you've just been kind of lying in the weeds like a lion does. And now you jumped up and caught the number 2 seed. They swept Greene County Tech last night. The 3 and 4 seed in the East will be determined next week by those 2. Let's go to the 5A Central, Kyle. Let's talk about the BB.
Take our Advil. I hope we took our Advil first.
Wow. Let's talk about that. The BB Badgers jumped back into contention last night. They swept. Not only did they sweep, but they blanked Maumelle 4-0 and 1-0 last night. So congratulations, BB Badgers. You still got some work to do to get into the state playoffs, but that puts you in a lot better situation right now. Chance Cleveland's club. Look, we talked about the young man on here, Clayton Ballard, young pitcher, lefty, works at mid-80s, works at both sides of the plate. 2 more. He's a true 3-pitch mixed guy. So he appeared in both games last night. He was just a bulldog. The guys competed, and I talked to Coach Cleveland late last night. So, Maumelle's still sitting at the top, but Greenbrier's jumped up to the number 2 spot. Benton and BB are tied for 4 and 5. Then you got Sylvan Hills. One of those is going to get left at home, boys. So it's going to be a fight to the end right there. The South, Lakeside took a step forward. They beat Sheridan last night. Drew Morgan led off that game with a home run. They won that game handily. They had beaten Lake Hamilton in the previous week, so Lakeside jumped up in the rankings this week. Lake Hamilton's 2, Sheridan 3, Arkansas High number 4 in the South. Going to the West, you talk about headaches. You got 6 teams that are vying for 4 spots. Alma's at the bottom at 6-6 right now. Van Buren, who has played really well of late, 7-5 in conference play. Haven't got an update on Farmington's record yet, but I'll get that. I know they ran into some weather issues. But Greenwood and Harrison are sitting back-to-back 8-4. Greenwood got that big win over the Goblins. And then the Cyclones sitting at the top right now in the 5A West.
So that was one that I wanted to touch on was Farmington, because Alma, they were like right on the verge last week of, really like a game or 2 or so. It wasn't very far out.
Yeah.
Then they dropped 5 of 7. They were swept by Farmington last week. I think either last week or the week before, you talked about just how well Farmington has improved. Now, I have Farmington at a 1-11 start.
Yep.
In the last month, they've been 8-3.
Yep.
So in their last 11 games, they're 8-3.
Yeah.
What a I was talking with Brad Johnson, the legendary girls basketball coach that recently became an assistant at the U of A, and we were talking about that right about I think the week after basketball season ended, and I was talking about how the softball team is obviously very young, but they've been playing really well. I think they're actually the number 1 seed in the West on the softball side right now, and the baseball team was struggling bad at that. That was right around the time that they were in their slump, and he said, I think that, and I thought, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was just coach speak, because look, Farmington they've got a history of winning in so many different sports. And I'm like, maybe not this year, but that is really coming to fruition. I mean, the Cardinals have made an exceptional turnaround.
Yeah. And that program they've had over the past few years, whether it be Class 4A or 5A, they've always been there. So they've always, gone through the tough 1-4A. Now they're in the 5A West when you got, Arkansas Razorback commits on you and D1 arms coming at you every weekend. So Coach Harper's just done a great job up there. They've got, some of the same names that you heard from football season and the run that they made. Those guys play 2 and 3 sports sometimes. So growing community up there, right outside of Fayetteville. I'm sure they get kids from all over, the northwest part of there, but the Farmington's just going to keep growing up there. So yeah, doing a great job. But what can you say? You got to win games at the end. It's a little bit easier. Qualify top 4, you go. It's not the 4A where you got to finish in conference top 4. Then you got to go to regional. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in the postseason here if they make it.
And I also wanted to, you talked about Lakeside. I want to give a big shout out to them, because what a game that was. They put up a 4 spots in the, the 4th inning, 5th inning, something like that. One or in the 5th, they won the 5-2 to get some redemption. Of course, Lake Hamilton had won that first matchup 6-2, and here at midweek, the Rams are a game and a half in the lead for first place in the South.
Yeah, they got to like where they're at right now, and there's been a lot of talk. That they've pitched well, and they, Drew Morgan at the top right there, underrated player in the state. I think he's got some juice in him. Good runner, good fielder. Shows a little bit of pop. I think as he grows and matures a little bit more, he'll be able to hit more, home runs and more doubles. But elite speed, but Lakeside's always been one of those programs going back, the last 15 years that have been right there. They put a few guys into college, White Gibson being one of them. He was, an inning away from defeating Little Rock Christian in that famed run 2 years ago. So it'll be interesting to see, how they handle success at a high level. It's been Sheridan and Benton, Lake Hamilton last year. So can they get in the state tournament and make that run? That's what I want to see, because that's one thing that they haven't gotten over the hump of getting out of the first round yet.
Then down in Class 4A, so starting in the classifications where we are now in the postseason. Now, I know not every single conference in 1 through 4A, the majority of them do have district tournaments, not every single one, but we'll kind of talk about some of those teams that are looking really well right now. Of course, we'll touch on the Super 7, but one thing that caught my eye, Kevin, was this week, Joe, and we talk multiple times this season and throughout every year about how Robinson, they're one of those that they challenge themselves, whether they're playing in their conference, which is really tough, or in the non-conference, and they are hosting number 6A number 4 Little Rock Christian on Friday. So once again, the Senators, they're going to get another great look before they really began the nitty gritty, I guess I'll call it, of the postseason play.
Yeah, you want to call nitty gritty. The number 6 team in the Super 7 poll is not even going to make a regional because they're in that conference.
Yeah.
CAC ruined Pulaski Academy's baseball lives last night by splitting with Harding Academy, which Harding Academy's number 1. Now CAC, they've been early in the year, they split, and I'm looking like, okay, young team. I mean, Coach Plumley's kid's on that team, and he's like 9th grade right now.
Yeah, he's a freshman. Yeah,
in fact, I know he's a freshman. So, what they've had to compete with this year is, okay, Harding Academy 9-2, Robinson's 9-3. They split with Morrilton last night. Logan Eichler, first game, shut out Morrilton. He was nails. Went 9 innings. Great job by Eichler, but Morrilton bounced back, got the win in the second. So it's already set up for the regional at Morrilton. They'll play the 4-5 South, which Harding Academy will be 1, Robinson 2, Morrilton 3. CAC, Central Arkansas Christian, is the 4 seed out of the 4-5 North. So Bauxite, Malvern, Fountain Lake, and Little Rock Mills is what it looks like, because only 4 teams in the 4A5 South have a team. East End doesn't have a team this year. They forfeited their games. So the first round matchup, Harding Academy and the Mills Comets. Fountain Lake will play Robinson. Malvern will play Morrilton. And Bauxite will take on Central Arkansas Christian. So, it's time that those two have been decided right there. And then Shiloh Christian, they won, so they get the double bye into the semifinals of the 1-4A district tournament, which is happening this week. Brooklyn and Highland are playing in the 3-4A district final. Brooklyn's just rolled right through. Cooper Bodie had 8 RBIs in a game against Highland last week. They won that first game 20-9. He was 5 of 6 for 8 RBIs. I know he was a runner-up. Or honorable mention, not runner-up, on our team-funded player of the week this week. So Brooklyn's playing really good ball right now. CrossFit is a game up on Warren in the 8, and then Arkadelphia is sitting on top of the 7 right now. Stuttgart, how about them Rice Birds? They beat the team that everybody said I needed to get my Super 7 rankings. Win, lost. So Stuttgart, Lone Oak, the Southerners of Southside are going to be number 1. What a job Coach Winter has done. There's 8 conferences in 4A now, so we got a lot to talk about here. But Southside's going to win the 6-4A. Coach Winter last year, they didn't start out too well this year. They started out bad, very bad. Non-conference, they're 7-10. I mean, they're just not, but they played tough teams. They played up in classification. They played some of the best teams in Class 4A and 5A. So, Lone Oak, Wynn, and Stuttgart can now fight for the 2, 3, and 4 spot. Lone Oak's a game ahead right now after that loss to Southside last night. But, this team has to play the 3, and that's going to be tough because you got Brooklyn, Highland, and then Gosnell right there. So looking forward to – and 4A's always been one of my favorites. I got to crew chief it twice. But now that they have 16 teams going, I'm even more excited because last few years it's been 12. Now that they extended and they split the Central Conference, you got 16 Class 4A teams get to go to the state tournament this year. And that's one of the best things that's happened with reclassification this year.
I know that we've seen a lot of these same teams in the Super 7 and outside looking in, but just kind of browsing through this here, other than Shiloh Christian, obviously NWA, Brooklyn, NEA, it's just a few Central, and then you also look and you think of CrossFit, Arkadelphia, DeQueen, Warren.
Yeah.
That is going to be a fun regional between 7 and
8. Last year Magnolia wins it. Monticello's the 2. Warren beats Morrilton in the first round of the state tournament and then has to play Robinson. Robinson barely beats them. So, Warren came out of nowhere last year, and they had a lot of the same guys back. So they're sitting in the second in the conference right now behind CrossFit. We've talked about the Eagles all year long. They had so much veteran leadership, combined experience from those 3 or 4 core guys that have been starters ever since were freshmen. So it's going to be an interesting tournament up there in Northeast Arkansas. But how it shakes out, the 1 plays the 4 for regional action. So that's Shiloh Christian playing Ozark. It looks like right now. Dardanelle's the 3, Pottsville's the 2, and Mina's the 1 and the 4. So it may be a situation where the 1 sweeps the 4 again. I mean, it's happened a few times over the last few years. So it was a little bit stronger last year because Morrilton was in that conference, but they've been moved out now. The 5, the South plays the North. We've talked about that. 7 and 8 go at it. So, yeah, you get Arkadelphia, Hamburg. A lot of these teams have played each other, and there's been some really good battles over the past few years. Nashville and Monticello made the semifinals in 2017, I believe, maybe 2017 or 16. And it was the start of Kyle Slayton's 3-year run where they won it back to back to back. So, yeah, they seem to have seen each other a lot over the past, 5-6 years.
I do have to give some quick love too to show. We talked about them last week, but Shiloh Christian, 16 in a row now. They are just on a man. Coach Gum, he is, and I know Coach Beers did a phenomenal job in an interim role last year with them, especially during the regular season run. But Coach Gum has taken over. They're just continuing to do what they do. But also, so Valley View, I guess they're playing Rogers Friday. And then they're going to play Shiloh Chris. So they got a little NWA. I don't know if it's like a round robin.
They played Fayetteville and Bentonville, I believe, last year.
Okay.
Or one of them was Rogers, because I believe it was Rogers or Rogers Heritage, because Slade thought he got all of a ball to right field and had to pimp a double because he trotted out on the way out of the box. So he knows what I'm talking about. We talked about that a few times. So, yeah, Shiloh, man, they've had 24, 25, 26 bombs this year. I haven't found another team that has had that many. Brody Maroon almost has that many by himself.
God, no joke.
12 right now. But, yeah, Shiloh Christian, yeah, you can't be surprised with the way Coach Gum has run a program. He's been at Sheridan, Batesville. A lot of people associate him with UCA and Southern Arkansas, but he's got a vast experience in coaching high school kids. He's been at Batesville, been at Sheridan. So, yeah, Coach Gum's looking forward to seeing them in the postseason for sure.
Then in Class 2A, I thought I had myself muted for a second. One time I didn't do it. So then now as we get into 3A, one of the notable games, well, of course, out of classification games that I noticed, Melbourne took down Riverside 8-3. And Riverside, of course, has been the number 1 team for at least half the season in Class 2A, the notable game from there. And so a lot of the same teams that we've talked about this year. But let's talk about the Charleston Tigers a little bit here. I know that they are about as high as they have been all season. So tell us a little bit about yet another River Valley team that we're used to talking about a lot in football.
Yeah, just very consistent over the past 2 months. Taking care of business in conference play. They've only played 17 games, so they don't have the huge body to work from. But they lost to Ozark and Dover. That's 2 4A teams right there. And then Hackett, Dover's 3A, but Hackett's one of the best 2A teams. Lost them 1-0, but then been on a roll. They beat Roland, Oklahoma. Roland, Oklahoma's produced a couple of college guys over the past few years, one of them being Carson Wiggins. They beat Lavaca, and then went right into conference play and took down Mansfield. Of course, Mansfield moving from 2 to 3A this year, and beat Boonville. That was really big. Took care of Paris. They've had 4 shutouts in their last 5 games, which is not a surprise. They've had really good pitching over that time period, and I think 7 shutouts on the year.
Then I wanted to go to the outside looking in as well, because I know that there's been, a little bit of chirping from Maumelle Charter. Why are they not in the rankings? Why is this? Why is that? And look, I get it. They've it makes sense. They've won a lot of ball games this year. They look pretty good. Now I know that things didn't go well against Woodlawn. Now here's the deal. Woodlawn is Woodlawn. We know what they've done in Class 2A, but you would have probably thought that Maumelle should have competed, or Maumelle Charter would have been a little bit closer in that one. So, what do you make of the Falcons right now? They have had a great year. They're 20-4 as of midweek this week. So certainly nothing to shake a stick at there. I know the strength of schedule hasn't been the strongest in the world, but nonetheless, they have taken care of business.
They have, and great facilities over there. Young program that's just going to get better because they'll have kids come in because it's a great school and great academic school. Yes, they're in a conference that has Episcopal that moved up from 2A to 3A. Pangburn has a couple of college arms. So, for the Falcons to go out and beat up Pangburn, they're undefeated in conference play. But some of the non-conference games, Cutter Morningstar, Class 2A, Atkins, Arkansas Christian Academy. So they beat Little Rock Central 10-3 last week. That's what I mean. You beat a 6A team, being a charter school that one of the newest programs in the state. So yeah, they deserve to be where they're at right now. Top 10 in Class 3A, which is really deep. So now that you've secured the conference title, now you get to go play regional against the 3-3A. And I mean, 3-3A has been up and down. They've had 4 or 5 teams, so they'll get a shot to make a statement come regional time.
Also, I wanted to kind of put you on the spot here because our top 2 teams are Ashdown and Genoa Central, down in the Southwest Arkansas, in the same conference, all those good things. I mean, they've been, very high all year long. I mean, pretty high. Is that what team, as we approach, I guess by the time that this episode drops, it will be May. Now, as we enter May 1st,
yep.
Who has the best chance in 3A? Just off you can name 1 or 2, but who has the best, whether it's, a highly ranked team, somebody in the outside looking in, who has the best chance at knocking one of those 2 teams off?
I keep going back to Walnut Ridge. They're sitting on top of that 3-3A conference right now. So they've had to compete all year long, and it shows that they got a little bit of depth. Coach Belcher's running a great program up there. Melbourne doing what they did to Riverside really kind of caught my attention. They lost to Cave City. That's not a really good, resume builder right there. So Elkins is not the Elkins they have been, with Corbin leaving for administrative role. So I think they're still good. They'll still make the regional. They won their conference. So any of those teams, I think, from Northeast Arkansas right now could, maybe give one of those top 2 teams a run.
And down in Class 2A, as I mentioned, Riverside, they fell in a matchup of ranked teams against 3A number 4 Melbourne last week. That was one of the notable games. Again, Kevin, in this one, I'll tell you, there wasn't a ton of changes here, but the big story continues to be one thing that we talked about with the team funded player of the week. We want to make sure we give it to the person that earns it, that we feel earns it the most. But we tried to do, especially since there's only 8 selections on the year, 9 selections on the year, you want to try to make it different. But Brody Maroon gave us no choice. And Murfreesboro, they've had a great season this year. They are going to play Spring Hill. I think Spring Hill for their conference title this Friday, either Friday or Monday. It's coming up. So Murfreesboro's been on a roll. He's a big reason for that. This 25 senior class, they were a big part of the football, under Coach Chesser in the past 2 years that went 13-1 in conference, I think is what they finished. And now they're rolling in baseball. Talked to Coach McCray the other day. He's really excited about where his team's at. And when you've got someone those kind of tears that you see with that Brody is on right now, I mean, obviously they happen, but it's just not something that you see every single day, hitting 3 home runs in a game. And then, and especially this about 3-week stretch that he's had in particular has just been simply phenomenal.
Yeah. And shout out his mom made sure we got the video of when she was sending them to us. And I was like, hey, he's just having a great run.
Oh, I meant to add that in here. I'm glad. I meant to put that in. Yeah.
So 12 home runs, 54 RBIs. Those are phenomenal numbers. I don't care what classification you play. I don't care if the fields are 300 or 310, whatever they are. You hit 12 home runs in high school baseball in Arkansas today, you've done something. I mean, you're up there with, Ty Wade leading a couple years ago and, the Valley View guys last year that put up numbers. So, shout out, Brody. You've done a great job this year. I want to talk about Palestine Wheatley real quick. They went 3 games without scoring a run. So it feels like Arkansas sometimes. But they lost to Riverside 2-0. Nothing to shake a stick at. Obviously, Riverside's the number 1 team in the state in that classification. Then you lost to Carlisle 1-0. Sheridan, okay, that's a 5A school, 8-0. You beat Barton, good. Lost to Lone Oak 5-2. So I think Palestine Wheatley's 16-10 right now. Moved them down a little bit this week, but I still think they're one of the top 3 teams in the state. Woodlawn and Parker's Chapel decided the 8-2A last week. Woodlawn, of course, came out on top in that one, 23-5 on the year. Hackett keeps rolling along. They're 18-5. Murfreesboro talked about Carlisle, great win for Stephen Two's bunch. They've got a couple of college guys, college prospects, Ty Tanksley being one of them. Little Pick, Jonathan Pickard Jr., the other one. So watch out for Southside, B Branch, Cedar Ridge. Aiden Jones had a really good week last week. They're still very dangerous in Class 2A.
Then the one I think you touched on Hackett when maybe one of the games that they played against the 3A squad, but that's pretty much the lone team in the western part of the state.
Yeah.
As far as you look at a lot of the NEA teams, so South Arkansas teams. So Hackett has really, as far as at least Class 2A is concerned, they have really held it down as one of the top teams.
Yeah,
for the west side.
Yeah, you look at Lifeway Christian, Mountainburg, Cotter. Those are the top 3 teams in the 1 right now, and I think those 3 can make it to a state tournament. You get Cedar Ridge, they're over there, but North Central. But yeah, Johnson County Westside, Hector, Danville. Greenland moved up, so they're in 3A now. So yeah, Hackett's done a great job. Mansfield's not 2A anymore. So yeah, they're 18-5 on the year. They've played a good schedule, Kyle. I think even though the regionals and conference tournament may not give them much challenge, they've played good outside of conference, and I think that'll help them in the state tournament.
As expected, all these teams here that we have listed in the Super 7 outside looking in, just like any baseball or softball team, you're going to have your slumps, you're going to have your good and your bad times. Do you feel like it is Riverside and Woodlawn and then maybe kind of everybody else, trying to say that as nice as possible? But, I mean, those two teams, for the most part, they kind of seem like they have separated themselves.
Yeah, and anything can happen when you play, 3 games in 3 days. So that's where you really get into the depth of these 2A, 3A teams, and especially 1A as well. But when you have to go that 3 days, 3 games in a row, that can tell a lot about a team, and not just the 1 game setting. We know McClure beat Valley View a couple weeks ago, but if they run into trouble, what does their 2 and 3 look like? It's like Episcopal a couple years ago. They had Drew Grumbles, who's at Johns Hopkins right now, playing Division III baseball and doing great. They're the number 1 team in Division III, on the mound in the semifinals. And they lost. They gave up like 4 or 5 runs. They kicked the ball around. They just weren't ready for it. So anything can happen in Class 2A. But, yeah, I just think the depth right now. Tate Hall's had a great year for Woodlawn. He was one of our team-funded player of the years. But the young man that started the state championship game last year is back on the mound for the Bears. Plus, they got some move-ins from Whitehall, Sheridan. I think, tournament time, it's going to come down to these 2. And I think it'd be a great 2A final.
No question about that. Then last but not least in Class 1A, one of the – I'll tell you what, St. Joe last week made a huge statement against Lee, 16 – I didn't see the box on – I couldn't find the box on that one. But, 10-run difference there. It's not overly shocked because, I mean, we've seen a couple of in 1A in particular, it's not uncommon. And we had a lot of this in softball last week because it's a lot of these things. I mean, they carry over from both baseball and softball, but that's one of the constants in 1A for both of us, for me and you and Jared and I. Taylor is pretty much always the top dog. And then the 1A2 conference tends to be pretty freaking loaded and all kinds of crazy things happen. That's what we had last week. And that's why 1A softball for me was tough to rank because we had all these different ones, but so that's not overly shocking, but I don't know that many saw a 10-run deficit in that one.
Yeah, and they're talking about Westside Greers Ferry, and that's who it was. That was on Monday when I compiled everything. That game had yet to be played. So, of course, St. Joe's, they beat Nemo Vista 18-2. They're only lost, in the past, few weeks. They lost to Southside B Branch, who's a really good Class 2 team. So, St. Joe's last year, they got to the semifinals, of course, ran into a hot Taylor team. That's going to happen, especially this time of the year. And I think that, Taylor, clear number 1 right now, but anybody, Westside, Viola split this year. Viola lost to Calico Rock. Hard for me to say that because the Longhorns have such a great tradition, but they slipped up in conference play. Now they don't have that tie with Westside Greers Ferry, so they'll likely have to work a little bit harder in a regional action. But Armorel, Norfolk are just party crashers, are crashing parties left and right. They're the hunted now.
So I am ignorant, very ignorant in this regard. Who has the best? Is it? I mean, between like West Side, I know they got good pitch. St. Joe's still got. Taylor's good anywhere you look. What are the teams? I imagine probably the answer is just look at the Super Seven because think about how much pitching is in baseball. But who are the teams with their overall best pitching in 1A?
Yeah, Hillcrest. Just about all of
Hillcrest,
these guys. Yeah. All of these guys. They split with Armorel last week. All these guys got one. And you get this far in the year and you can get to a regional final, state tournament, you've got one guy that you can really rely on. And then you got a couple of two others that could beat just about anybody. And when you have that, Taylor has done it the last couple of years. Westside Greers Ferry, they were dominant last year with one guy. Now they've got two or three that can throw. They've been really good. Mount Ida's got one that can go out and just beat just about anybody. And then Viola and Armorel, they're pretty deep on the mound as well.
Well, that will get. I know that it wasn't unbelievably in depth this week, but once we get to regional, like frankly, district is tough to keep up with because it's not AAA. People say what they want about the AAA, but the good thing about that is when it's AAA regulated,
it's on the side.
Yeah, right. You've got brackets at your disposal. So that is really so. Thank you to the schools that do keep those updated, but it is very tough to keep up with a lot of stuff during district week. So we'll have a little bit more. I guess we've gone for about 40 minutes, but we'll have a little bit more in-depth stuff next week once we get to regionals. And of course, like as we move further now, the teams that are playing are going to be less and less. So that'll be a little bit more in-depth stuff as well. But and it's been kind of a crazy week. Kevin, this has been between all three, me, you, and Jared, like this has been the craziest year in terms of schedules. And as I've told people, like we've only got really about 2 or 3 day window that we could between everything you do, everything, because Jared coaches, he's a firefighter, he cuts trees. So like everything that we all do, it is hard to get this window. So we appreciate everybody sticking with. I know that, in previous years, it has been a little bit more consistent, but we're adults and we're all dads just like everybody else. So we have crazy things happen. So I appreciate everybody hanging tight with us again. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on YouTube if you prefer to look at our pretty faces. But also to a big thank you to the ones who make it possible: Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, Boom Boom Floor Shine, and Chinook Seedery. So, I guess this time next week, Kevin will be previewing the regional, kind of recapping some things from district. A lot of times in district, I was talking with Cade Carlton on his show on Tuesday, doing my segment on there. And district, you will have some upsets here and there, but they're few and far between. Most of the time, the things that you figure are going to happen do happen. It's when we get to regionals, that's when the real fun. I'm not saying that upsets don't happen in district, but it's much more common. Now, of course, sometimes a 4 over a 1 is misleading just because, it might be the 4 might be from a really, really tough conference and the 1 might not be. But that's really when we start seeing the crazy madness ensue.
The reason for that is the conferences that do have district tournaments, and not all of them do. The 4A, 5 North, it doesn't have one. So what happens is conferences that have them, the top 2 teams automatically get a bye to the semifinals. Okay. So that verifies that they're going to be in a regional tournament. That's rewarding them for having a good conference regular season. Okay. So they're guaranteed to be there. You'll see some 3s and 4s, but most of the time it's the top 4 in the conference regular season make it to the regional tournament. That's when you start to see the upsets, like you said.
No question about it. Well, make sure you stick with us. We'll be here for the rest of the season. I'm sure by now that many of you have seen that I have Kevin and I will be competitors actually here coming soon. Actually, for the first time ever, Kevin, works for. Look, I'm humble enough. So for those that don't know, I'm going to be the new publisher of hogbeat.com. And of course, Kevin writes baseball for Trey Biddy over at hogsports.com. Look, I'll say this. I've had a lot of respect for Trey Biddy for 2 decades now, Danny West and all them. They've done a phenomenal job. I'm humble enough to admit that is the premier brand in Arkansas sports reporting. I mean, you look at the numbers back it up. And I've got nothing but respect for those guys, and that's how it's going to be, moving forward. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that once we get to the last show. We'll kind of the way I described it on the softball episode with Jared, I kind of just said, look, I'm going to be like a senior parent, and I'm going to soak in every moment that I can, because I'm not going to get completely out of high school sports, but I will be scaling it back a lot. I'll have to. I mean, I got to take care of my brand. So but we'll talk more about that as we get along. We're going to enjoy the final weeks here of the spring sports season, and we'll worry about that when we get to it. But that'll do it for this week. We'll again talk about regionals next week and kind of recap some of the highlights from districts. Other than that, the district tournament, not districts, it's not plural, but other than that, again, make sure you're subscribed. Hit us up if you want to be mean to us. I haven't said this all year. If you want to be mean to us, tell us how bad we suck. You know where to find us on Twitter, or I think both of our emails are on there. So other than that, we will see you next week. Thank you all again for being patient with us and for all the support. For Kevin Bohannon and all of us here, we'll catch you next time.